I was a troubled child. I was a troubled teen, and I was a troubled adult. Now, I was only ever in trouble as a child, and it was always being in trouble for not being someone else. Always being in trouble for being myself, for being too honest, too enthusiastic, too unique. I was always getting in trouble for being me. I got bullied by my teachers. I got bullied by the other students. I got bullied by my brother and sister, and I got bullied by my parents. I got bullied by my cousins, and I had 2 aunts who did not bully me, and an uncle who did. Although he was kind of more jocular and teasing. It bothered me simply because it was on top of all of the very mean-spirited bullying that I was receiving, so being teased was... I just couldn't handle it. I hated it. But I can look back in time and realize that he wasn't being mean-spirited. Most of them, yes. Yeah, micro-hostilities, man, I'm telling you. So by age 8, the depression was real. But the philosophy of the time was that depression was something that happened as a result of excess worry. The depression was a symptom of stress, a symptom of grief, a symptom of problems. And since I didn't have anything to worry about because I was a kid, and I hadn't recently lost anyone, not even a pet, I had no good excuse to be miserable, and so therefore I must be psychologically deficient in some fashion, or putting it on. And frankly, being accused of faking it has been a really common theme in my life. If I try to tell people my troubles, it's just assumed to be some kind of reverse bragging. Instead of bragging on how great I am, I'm bragging on how miserable I am. And I've plumb stopped. I've plumb stopped trying to have people relate or to understand where I'm coming from, because they just won't. Anyway, they're just going to make up their own story about why I'm saying these things and assume that none of it's real anyway. So if nothing I say is real, why say anything? So these days, I really do keep my own counsel, and I thank you, camera, thank you, internet, because I got someplace to put it. So by age 24, I'd pretty much given up on psychiatry because none of them ever followed up the drugs with any kind of therapy or assistance to fix the problems. No one ever tried to straighten out the problems with my parents being abusive narcissists. Nobody ever tried to stop the other children from bullying me. No one even acknowledged that the bullying should bother me. For some reason, I was supposed to simply become a violent little psychopath, beat them all up, and win the fight, and then everybody loved me. And I was told to do that by just about every adult I complained to. I was told to get violent. And then they'd wash their hands of me when I told them I was a pacifist. Because, pacifism is just, what are you, nuts? You're a kid. How can you understand anything like that? Well, I would say I'm reincarnated, and I learned it in my last life, and I don't have to understand it to believe it. It never went over very well. So by age 24, I was proper miserable, already out of an abusive relationship, already lacking in connections with anybody, just completely isolated, alone, and broke. Jobs were failing. I'd get in a job, and I was already under so much stress and duress that I'd get into these jobs and I had no spoons left, and I would be crying within 2 weeks. I'd be crying at my desk. And these jobs were wholly inadequate for me as a creative person who needs to have a lot of alone time making things. All you have to do is say, hey, make me this, and I'll figure out how to make the thing, kind of thing. I'm no engineer, okay? So we're talking things, not structures. But nobody ever wanted, every time I ever told somebody the kind of stuff that I was capable of and what I really thought I would be happy doing, the response was, yeah, well, anybody would love a job like that. Everybody wants that job. Get real. Go do this other thing that everybody can do and anybody can do because everybody can do it. And it's like, no, I can't do it. Oh, you're lying to me. So I was proper miserable, and nobody was doing a damn thing about it. They just wanted to keep trying out a new drug to see if it would make me feel happy. Like, what is this happy pill obsession that happened? All of a sudden, everybody's working with this biochemical model of, if we just figure out what piece of chemistry is wrong up there and we tweak it, you'll be all better. And then you'll just be a normal sociopathic parent like the rest of us. And no, Doesn't work that way. Vive la différence. I'm sorry, humans are not a monolith. And I will never be normal. I never even wanted to be normal. I tried. I was around age, I was trying to be normal right up until university. So I would have been, I think I was 25 when I went to university. And I realized that I didn't have to worry about looking job ready all the time. I wasn't always at any given moment ready to answer a call for a job and go to a job interview. So I didn't have to worry about having my hair and my appearance looking a certain way. So I just kind of broke out. And I got out the old, that was my first Iroquois, my first Mohawk. That was great. I loved it. And I blossomed. I was happy. I still struggled with depression because I was actually living on less than on welfare. I was living on so little money, and I was still unable to get work, and I was still unable to make connections with people, and I was still getting in trouble with everybody around me because they would just arbitrarily start getting mad at me and decide they hated me and start accusing me of being a lying person and a mind manipulator and all these other things. It was just like, I don't even know how that stuff works. I can't even see it being done to me. And now all of a sudden I'm to blame for it. Autism, am I right? So the depression continued. But what I did do was I took psychology courses. I took biology courses. I learned how to read journals. I learned about the biochemical level of the brain. I learned how to read those medical words and medical phrases and understand how medical words are put together. I studied Latin. I read all of the religious books I could get my hands on, the Bhagavad Gita, I never finished the Quran. It was too misogynistic and I kept getting mad. And I finally decided that anything that's so unequal and so misogynistic just really isn't going to have enough wisdom for me to be bothering with, especially since it's based on the other two religions that are both based on one tome that I had read well and frequently. So I let that one go. But I worked my way through the religious wisdom of the ages, and I am not a well-studied Buddhist. I studied enough to understand the basic. I think actually my favorite books were the Carlos Castaneda series. But that being said, I spent many hours studying in the 900 section of the library and then some. I also went through the psychology, and I went through biology. All of these things I studied, spirituality. And I slowly crafted solutions for myself. And these solutions were ridiculously simple. But none of them works on its own. There is no one single solution to depression, you see. Depression is a response to life. And if life is out of order, then depression will be part of how you respond to it. The stress builds up until the depression takes over. It's your body responding to an excess of demand by shutting down. It's like a blackout on a power station after too much demand, or a brownout even, if you will. And so to fix depression for me, I have to worry about my nutrition. I must make sure that I'm getting enough protein. I'm getting enough vitamin D. I'm getting enough, generally, of the vitamins and minerals that I need. I need to make sure I'm not overdoing it with the sugars and the bad foods and the caffeines. I need to pay mind to my medical dosages for my lung medicines because they can affect me. I need to recognize when my body hurts that it's going to have an effect on my mood. Then I have all of the trials and travails of not being well employed and not having a secure home that I have to just manage with psychologically. And then there's the spiritual question of, is there any point to being alive? Is there anything here that constantly tumbles around between this is the point, and then why do I care that that's the point, and I guess I'm supposed to care, and why must I continue, and this back and forth that goes on those long nights, and that is mostly battled by watching a lot of Hermitcraft. You guys are good. And so there's all of these different layers. You've got to solve all these different layers of your life, the ones you can. You can't solve them all. For me, isolating myself is both bad and better. Because the people that I generally wind up running into are bad for me. And so it's better to be alone, even though I'm not good for myself all the time. But then there are people that I've managed to land among that seem to be very good for me. And so I'm cultivating those. I'm going to cultivate those relationships as best I can. I mean, I'm not in charge of where those relationships go. I'm only in charge of how I treat those people. And if it's not good enough for them, it's not going to work. Well, that's the other problem, that because I'm an autistic, I'm treating people the way I want to be treated. I'm treating people with dignity and respect and honesty. And it's not translating that way because they communicate those qualities differently. I do it by being generous, by being responsible, by being polite and respectful. They do it by bouncing off of each other's emotions, by mirroring and echoing, and basically by lying at each other, lying accurately. I don't know where they ever get to the germ of who they are when they lie at each other in order to get along. That part I don't get. But at least in the circumstances I'm in, the focus isn't on the conversation. The conversation is, in fact, almost a hindrance to the event because we're there to work. And so I can just focus on getting the work done. I can talk about work. I don't have to play these games of bouncing ping pong ball emotion back and forth. It's like, oh, you feel bad. Well, I feel bad. Well, you feel good. Well, I feel good. Well, I suppose it's not so bad to feel bad about this, so maybe you feel a little better. And I just can't. Nobody ever did it for me. I don't know how to do it, and I don't like it anyway. I don't like it when it's done to me. Because it's disingenuous to me. It's like, well, who are you then? If all you are is my mirror, who are you? I get a lot of that where people are like, oh, you this, that, and the other thing. It's like, you just described yourself at me, and none of those things are correct because that's not my motivation. That's not where my head is at, and that's not the choices that I make in life. So why are you accusing me of being this person that you appear to be? And then other people will be like, oh, that's what people do. They project and they reflect, and it's like, stop it. No, you know what? Go home. Go home. You can't have my cookies. Go home. To be independently wealthy, huh? That would cure my depression. Anyways, as far as the talk about depression goes, I wanted to get to the point where when I see people who are depressed, I don't give them advice. I don't. I just tell them I hope I'm sorry they feel crappy and I hope they feel better soon. And if they want to talk, I'm here. I'm not sure how I would have responded to the advice that I would have to give now. But I do know that I've given that advice before. And it's never received. They start to denigrate my experience with depression and tell me it can't have been that bad. If diet, nutrition, and lifestyle can fix it, it wasn't that bad. Theirs is a serious problem. Now, past the Cheetos, I'm out of Oreos. And grab me another Coke while you're at it. Oh, really? Diet and lifestyle's got nothing to do with it. Had any chicken soup lately? They don't listen. I don't know what it is about mental illness, but it's a stubborn thing that wants to hold. It's almost like, and I'm thinking back now to when I would cling to my state of mind with stubbornness. And I would, the observer in me would be like, why am I so stubbornly staying like this? And it's because it was what felt familiar and what felt like a strategy for success. And what I mean by that is that the child in me, where my emotions lie, because I think of it as the child, the adult, and the elder. These are the three people inside me, we have the id, the ego, and the, I don't know. You know what I mean? We all recognize to some degree that there's layers of our personality. And for me, it's the child, the adult, and the elder. The elder is the observer, the one that just sits back and makes wry comments about what's going on. The child is the one that's throwing all the feelings out. And the adult is the one that's deciding what to do. Okay? So the child in me is throwing out the depression and stomping its feet and taking over the room with sheer noise. And the elder in me is sitting back and going like, this doesn't work. We can't work like this. This isn't working. Just isn't working. You got to do something. And the adult is like, I can't anymore, which isn't working. And when the adult goes, hey, kid, sit down, shut up, and get to work. We got work to do. And we're going to do this. No, we're going to do this now. I don't care that you don't want to. We're still going to do it. And you get up and you cook that meal, or you clean that room, or you brush your teeth, or you take that shower, whatever the stupid thing is. The adult is the one that makes it happen, and the elder is the one that gives the ideas and suggestions as you get going. But first you shut the kid up. And that's the internal dialogue that's going on when I deal with my depression, and I get up and I go do. And that's the tricky part, because that's the self-discipline. And for me, self-discipline was the one thing that all that bullying taught me. The one thing I learned from all of the beating and the abuse and the verbal abuse. Yeah, my mother would beat me with spoons. Other kids would take and damage my things, find ways to hurt me, to make me scream and cry, pull things, yank things, throw things at me. So it was a lot of physical abuse as well as the mental abuse. And the thing that all that taught me was self-discipline. It took me a long damn time. I didn't really get control of my berserker rage until my 20s. I got control of my in-the-moment feelings at a very young age, because over and over again the adults just kept telling me that the kids wouldn't bully me if I didn't react. That if I had a flat emotional expression, zero emotion, I did not show them how it made me feel, then they would get bored and quit. I heard that so often. And so that was what I was trying to cultivate, and I got pretty damn good at it too. By high school, I could let it out later, or actually I wasn't letting it out later, I could hold it in. And what would happen was somebody would trigger me with something that was just that little bit further over the top, like that girl who walked behind me in music class holding her music stand and then lightly bapped me with the leg of it on the back of the head. And that light bap with this sharp metal instrument was extremely painful. And then she giggled and said, sorry, and put her music stand down as I got up and followed her into the back room where she was going to get her clarinet, grabbed her by the neck and suspended her against the wall. Even though she was taller than me, she was now inches off the floor, and screamed in her face that I didn't deserve the bullying that she had been dealing out to me all year, and that this was the last straw, and she had to stop now. And then I let go, and I fled the room, and I went crying in the bathroom, because I felt terrible for losing my temper like that. And assaulting someone. There were no repercussions except that she stopped being rude. I mean, I won. It was exactly what the parents were always telling me to do, and it was exactly what worked, and it was exactly the wrong thing, and I hated it, and I hated myself for it, and I apologized to her, and I never felt okay about it until I had finally learned to forgive myself for actually responding, until I had learned to respond emotionally much more in the moment, verbally, with noise instead of with physical acts. Because it was again in my early 20s that I again, hands around someone's throat, holding them off the ground, yelling at them. At that time they called the police. And it's just sheer luck that I didn't get arrested. Sheer luck. Honestly. Pure luck. And it's pure luck that I never got a criminal record. But I also at that point went, because those aren't the only two times that I had lost my temper and come just a little too close to manslaughter. And each time something would stop me before it would become hazardous. And I guess my diminutive size helped as well, but I knew I had to fix it, so I took stress management. Like I said, study. And in the stress management is where the key to depression lies. When you manage the stress, you manage the depression. I kid you not. And part of managing stress is stop choking it down and keeping it in. Stop pretending you're a sociopath. You got feelings. Be an emotional person. I'm not talking about losing yourself and going berserk. That's what happens when a naturally emotional person tries not to be emotional. When a naturally emotional person goes ahead and emotes freely, mindfully, they never lose it. So if someone's making me angry, I will be patient with them. But at some point I will say, that's it. I am angry with you. I have had enough. You can leave, and I'll go off yelling at my walls. And they can overhear me if they want to. And I'll rant at the walls. And I didn't hurt them. And when I'm ranting, I'm speaking truth. I'm not making up mean things to say. I'm just getting it off my chest. And if they don't want to listen, they can walk away, because I'm not talking to them anymore. I'm in another room. And I don't care how they feel about it at that point, because they've clearly been obnoxious, because I was trying hard. And that's what I'm saying. You've got to stop taking responsibility for everybody else. You matter as much as them. It doesn't matter if the whole world treats you like nothing. The entire world can be wrong, you know. Absolutely. The whole planet, every living human except yourself, could be wrong about something, especially when it has to do with you and who you are and where you're at and what you mean and why you're there. They can all be wrong. You might be a really, really wonderful person, and you're acting wrong because you're trying too hard to please people who really just want to keep you down, because it's a kiss up and kick down world. So, depression? Yeah, it's serious. It kills. It ruins lives. But the solution? I'm sorry, there is no happy pill. Most of those pills will rot your brain and leave you disabled. Maybe not displaying mental illness to the people around you anymore, but there won't be all of you left. You won't have the intellect you're used to. You won't have the wit you're used to. You won't have the emotional depth you're used to. Not the joys, not the sorrows, none of it. Would you rather be flat than sometimes miserable to the skies and writing lousy poetry or good songs or who knows? Think about that. Emotions are here in you naturally. It's okay to have emotions, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. What's not okay is to use those emotions against others. You see, when you take out the coercive part, when you keep those as those are your emotions, you're not using them on people, you are feeling them. There's nothing wrong with that. So don't let those narcissists who are putting it on in order to coerce you make you look bad either. You be gracious when you're having emotions. Don't swear at people. Don't insult people on purpose. Don't call them down. And certainly don't flail your arms at them or move large objects around in their presence. It freaks them out. Back off and have your emotions. And when you're done, come back and you'll know what you need to tell them. That's the other beautiful part of ranting at the walls. When you come back, you know what it is you need to say to the person with whom you are angry. And you can say it without cruelty, without insult, without unkind intentions, and with as much clarity as you can find, because you've had time to say it to yourself over and over again. And when you run across someone who's shouting at their walls, leave them alone. They're doing the right thing. If they wanted to talk to you, did they know they could? If they did, they would have. If they didn't, take the opportunity next time to let them know they can. But walk on by when someone's shouting at their walls. Just pretend they're talking on the phone. It's okay to shout at the walls. The walls don't have ears.